It seemed like the Tigers were a lot more in unison, and it looked like we were watching a 2018 or a 2019 or a 2016 Clemson Tiger football game. And Matthew mentioned a little bit with the play calling as well. I don't think that the play calling was vastly different. I actually think that it was pretty similar. And I think that Cade Klubnik just executes the offense in a different manner.
On today's episode, Faxon Childress joins the show. We discuss Clemson's 27th conference championship. DJ Oyengalale, among others, has hit in the transfer portal, and this team is now Cade Klubnik's. We also discuss bowl season, the Army-Navy game, and much more on this week's episode of the College Football Show.
He knew it was going to happen, so I admire his courage.
This is the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show, presented by Nachos and Analysis.
Welcome to episode 16 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. Today is Thursday, December 8th, and the Tigers make the switch to Cade Klubnik on their way to the program's 27th conference championship. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Johnson. I told Matthew before this show, hopefully I don't sound too bad, a little under the weather. If Deshaun Watson can play a game and beat the Gamecocks on a torn ACL, I can fight through this. This will be my flu game. So how's it going, Matthew?
Drew's going for 72 tonight. Or no, he only dropped like 44 in the flu game. Some crazy number. Drew's dropping 44 tonight, but it's going good. First off, I did want to clarify, last week on the South Carolina episode, I was wrong in one of the stats I kept repeating. I miscalculated in my own head my stat. DJ was 7 for 25 entering the fourth quarter. I kept saying that he was 7 for 33 entering the fourth quarter, but he only finished the game 7 for 29. So that was impossible. Whenever I was doing the stats in my head, I messed it up. But I did also want to just have one random thought while I was like typing out my notes from the game on Saturday. I had this random thought that have we ever considered, when I say we, I'm talking about Clemson football, not Nachos and Analysis. Have we ever considered how much better our scout team would be if the back half of our roster wasn't the Daniel High School JV team? And I'm really hoping the youngest Sweeney, or that once the youngest Sweeney is out of the Pickens County school system, Dabo won't be attending Central or Daniel football games anymore, and we won't have 5'7" safeties on the back half of our roster, and he might actually have to go out on the recruiting trail. Just a thought, just a random thought to start the episode.
There at the end of the fourth quarter, I looked at Faxon and I'm like, I do not know who any of these people are. There were a bunch of short white dudes out there, and people I have not seen before. That you might be on to something, Matthew.
It's the school for Daniel High School football players who can't play football good.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should say the general vibe and attitude of today is a lot more uplifting and positive in comparison to last week. Me and Matthew were talking earlier this week. I guess misery loves company, and people love to be negative and that kind of stuff. I'm trying to check to get the most updated stat here, but I'm almost certain last week's episode following Clemson's loss to South Carolina was the most listened to Nachos and Analysis College Football Show of the season.
So I guess we can just expect nobody to listen to this episode.
Yeah, probably not. So we're tied. We're actually tied. We have the same amount of listens as we do episode 1, the most listened to episode, and this past week's against South Carolina. So we do appreciate all you listeners, and don't just come around when we lose. Hang around while
come celebrate with us.
Good. Yeah, celebrate with us. Matthew, what were your general thoughts of this past weekend? There were a lot of good college football games, championship games. Clemson was fun to watch this weekend.
Yeah, and for the first time in a while, I'll save a lot of what I want to talk about with the game when we talk about like the stats and stuff from it when Faxon comes on later. But I'll own it straight up to everybody. I did pick North Carolina to win last week, and it did not happen by a lot. So I'm not mad about it. Obviously, I did have a realization in the game that I think Brandon Streeter was calling the same plays the entire time for both quarterbacks. They're just executing it differently and making different reads off of the same play call. So Brandon Streeter, Cade Klubnik saved you your job. Nobody's calling for Brandon Streeter's head anymore.
Yeah, that was very quiet on the Brandon Streeter front this weekend.
Right after this week, I was researching merch, and I made just a joke design of a Fire Street shirt to put on our store, and then this happens.
Might have to hold on to that one for a little while, but no, it was. I think I mentioned later in the interview with Faxon, but this was the first time since Wake Forest last year that I was excited to come home and watch the replay of the game. I was stayed with my parents just outside of Charlotte. I got home around like 1:30 after the game was over, and would have loved to stayed up and rewatched it like instantly as soon as I got home, but that was not an option. But it was fun to see the Tigers having fun, like just the way that they were playing, all the turnovers, everything. It felt like a completely different vibe, and it looked like a completely different team than the game we saw the previous week against South Carolina. So
we finally saw a complete game put together from Clemson, and this is what it looks like. And we could have been doing this all year. Well, it's not that easy just to say we're going to put together a complete game, but this is what the potential was all season.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? And I know a lot of people have been kind of questioning this. What were your thoughts initially when Cade went into the game? Were you expecting just kind of like that Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, they get a drive and they come back out, or what was your initial thoughts?
Well, when DJ was first in there, the throws that he had to make were there to make, and he just didn't do it. It just seemed like he was kind of out, or mentally, out mentally. It seems like his decision might have already been made up that he was leaving Clemson after this game, and it was kind of looking like Cade was going to come in, and we were talking about last week on last week's episode, but Dabo's tune changed from the end of the South Carolina game, like, no, DJ's our guy. And then as the week went on, it slowly got, we're going to try and give Cade some meaningful looks. So I think DJ saw the writing on the wall, and he was probably mentally already out of Clemson before Saturday. So I think he was just there for a formality. He was there to pass the torch, and he kind of knew it too. So he didn't really make the plays when he had to. When Cade came in, that first play where he kept it on the RPO and then kind of slinged it out on the screen, like, that's the athleticism and execution on play calling that we haven't seen since Trevor was here.
Yeah, it was refreshing to see. And on that note, DJ did hit the transfer portal along with a handful of other people. We'll discuss that here in a few minutes with the Twitter poll. But the topics for today's show, we go over our Week 14 picks. I inch a little bit closer to catching up to Matthew. Then we discuss our Twitter poll. What Clemson transfer hurts the program the most or will have the biggest impact heading into next season? I'll give you those options here in a minute. And then, as we mentioned, Faxon Childress of Faxon Sports with 105.5 The Roar joins us. Had the chance to meet him Saturday at the game. We've kind of followed each other for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years now at this point, and went to go meet up with our friend of the show, Morgan Thomas, and Faxon was there, and I was like, I think I know who you are, and kind of introduced myself, and he and I ended up hanging out the whole game. So excited to have him on later in the show. Then we discussed the final playoff rankings. There was no TigerNet poll this week because it was the final poll, and it came out on Sunday. Then, as always, Fact or Fiction, and then Matthew and I give out our Week 15 picks, which, if you're keeping score at home, it's getting closer and closer. And the only game to pick this week is Army-Navy, so we're going to give a favorite pick in that game, and we're each going to pick a over or a under for that game. Before we kind of wrap it up, talk a little bowl game, and it'll be our last full episode for a little while. We'll have shorter bowl game episodes and that kind of stuff, give out picks and stuff like that heading forward. until that December 30th matchup with Tennessee in the Orange Bowl.
I did want to jump in and say, though, this is going to be the first complete episode that is going to be uploaded in real time on YouTube, because I got extra time this week. I had time to do a project, and I decided to use my project time to work on creating animations and graphics and stuff for our video version of the podcast. So you're not going to be able to see our beautiful faces yet. We might work on that for next season, but there will be a video that will come out on YouTube this week, shortly around or after the actual episode goes out on Spotify. So be sure you're subscribed on YouTube and check that out, and go leave a comment if you're listening.
We're dipping our toes into the world of YouTube. That's Morgan Thomas has been kind of helping me out with some of the stuff that he uses when he makes his YouTube videos. He puts out great content. So check that out. And I'm actually actively working to get some of that stuff together for a baseball podcast too. So baseball season quickly approaching. I don't know. I know Clemson basketball is doing pretty well, but I can't really get into it. Maybe once football season gets over.
Yeah, I have not paid attention to basketball at all this year. I've had a few opportunities to go to the games, but I'd rather just sit here and play video games, honestly.
There was a gentleman in the stands repping a Brad Brownell shirt at the football game on Saturday, which I found quite...
That's what I'm changing the merch to.
Yeah.
Instead of Streeter.
I've always just thought it'd be cool just to print an orange shirt with a big brown L on it. Simple, to the point. No one other than Clemson fans will get it. Maybe even that'll go over some Clemson fans' heads. So, but week 14 picks. It was a rough week for Matthew. I went 50%. How about your picks there, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, that TCU game, even though I missed on the pick, that was the game of the week. I don't know if you watched. I guess you were in Charlotte, so you might not have got to watch as much football this week as I did, but that was the game of the week. I watched all of the big conference championship games, at least. Great from start to finish. Kansas State got it done when they needed to, and that's all they had to do. The one time of the year I picked against them, and then they go out and win. So it's all right.
You've been hyping up that Vaughn guy, and Saturday was the first time I got a chance to watch him.
Isn't he so good?
He's electric.
He's insane.
I was having to watch that on my phone because I was at my parents' house, and apparently in the Charlotte area, Dish and ABC have some kind of contract dispute. So it was literally my dad, my sister, and myself all sitting on different couches or chairs in the living room watching it on different devices while we had like some smaller championship game on the TV.
No, yeah, that kid is crazy. Like, I think they were talking in the commentary of that game, talking about he's like benching 225 like 20 times and squatting like 480 10 to 15 times. It's like, this kid is 5'5", like, or 5'6", like he shouldn't be doing this, but he, like you said, he is electric and he's quick. He gets behind people and he makes them miss.
Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite did not hit. This was, I guess it was Friday night, the Utah USC game, with the that just did not go USC's way at all. And I think that might have even started before the game when what's his face, their quarterback, had his fingernails painted. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that. A lot of people are pointing that out, that he's a Heisman finalist and right now the current betting favorite to win the Heisman. So it kind of seems like he's going to get it. People are like, oh, well, he doesn't have character. Like, he did this for this game last week. It's like, you guys gave Johnny Manziel the Heisman trophy. Like, character doesn't mean anything.
No, a lot of people will push past someone's character in the sport of college football. You had the TCU Kansas State game for your favorite. I had that for my underdog, Kansas State. I just had a feeling. I knew that TCU came into that game undefeated, but I don't know. Like I've mentioned before, it's hard to beat the same team twice. Kansas State pulled it out. That was an awesome game. Came down to the wire there at the very end. So
yeah, and the game that didn't come down to the wire is what I picked for my underdog. That's LSU and UGA. LSU or Georgia was favored by 17.5 in that game. I picked LSU to cover. There was a small chance in there throughout the game where like LSU might have been able to cover at least, but It wasn't even close. Georgia and who I picked for my over, actually, Michigan, just had cakewalks for the conference championship. And it kind of sucks to have teams like USC play Utah. And then you have Clemson playing North Carolina, who's a pretty good team. TCU playing Kansas State, two really good teams. Like, people were grinding for the conference championship, and a couple of these bigger teams had cakewalks.
Yeah. There was a brief moment where Purdue was kind of pushing, especially there in the first half. But, I was kind of getting updates there on my phone. My over was UCF Tulane. You went ahead and marked these colors. I was going to take your word for it. I don't even know what the score was in that game, but it is green on my sheet here. So
it was a lot. It hit 56.5 pretty early, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, final for that was 45-28.
45-28. Okay, yeah, that went well over.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as I was watching it, because I turned off the Georgia game in like the second quarter because it got out of hand, and put on that game a little bit. So I was watching the score at least for you for that. But yeah, the only pick I hit this week was the over on the Michigan Purdue game at plus or minus 52. You hit your over, UCF Tulane, and then you did miss the under, which was LSU Georgia under 51. You kind of thought it was going to be one of those slug it out SEC games, but that's not really what we got. I was kind of skeptical about that because LSU's defense isn't really what they were in 2007. I don't think LSU's defense right now is capable of having one of those grinded out games. Like, they're just going to give up too many points. So
no, that was one. I was able to stay at my parents' house and watch the TCU game. I think I saw like the opening drive for both LSU and Georgia, and then I hit the road to Charlotte, which I made a critical error in driving to Charlotte. FanFest was separated by one street from the Charlotte Knights baseball stadium where they were having a Christmas light show. And what street did I turn down? The road that goes right in between FanFest and the Christmas show. So once I got off the interstate, I only had about 4 or 5 blocks to go, and it took me about 45 minutes, 50 minutes just to move those 4 or 5 blocks. So I'm glad I left when I did, and it did miss up most of the LSU Georgia game. But yeah, that was the season totals come up to 16 for Matthew and 15 for me. So heading into this week, we're picking the Army-Navy game, the only game this week. It should be close. Matthew could pull away, or I could tie it up or take the lead here. So are we sticking with the punishment being going to a Carolina game of some sort, wearing Carolina gear?
I mean, I'm okay with that. Could it be at Clemson if like they come to play a team here, we just have to dress in Carolina and go to it? Because I don't really want to go to Columbia.
No, does anyone want to go to Columbia?
That's a punishment in itself, and then I have to wear South Carolina too.
No, I don't know. I feel like it'd be far more embarrassing to do the Carolina stuff in Clemson too, especially with the risk of running into people you know. So
yeah,
what other opportunities do we have here in Clemson? I guess. Baseball?
I guess the next one would be baseball. So I guess you're not getting into the Cajun Cafe in a cock shirt.
They are not letting that one happen. Maybe a softball game or something.
See, that's the only thing. Like I could keep a shirt in my closet that says Cox on it just because it says that. Like, but if it has any other branding or any other ugliness on it, then I probably can't keep it. It's just a one-off, straight to Goodwill.
All right, Twitter poll. What Clemson transfer hurts the program the most or will have the biggest impact heading into next season? Now, before I kind of get your thoughts on this, Matthew, I have to say there was a lot of participation. This was one of our bigger polls. I appreciate everybody who always participates in these. If you don't follow us on Twitter, do so. Why are you listening to this podcast and don't follow us? But there were a handful of people commenting and quote retweeting. None of these are going to affect us at all. And I just think that's just like a dumb take. Like, at the very least, these people that are included in this poll are part of the depth. So the options were DJ Uyunglele, Kobe Pace, Fred Davis, and Kevin Swint. What was your thought here, Matthew?
So I voted for Kobe Pace, but even though the running game this season really was fine without him, everybody else on the list was kind of expected. Maybe Fred Davis, but he didn't really get that much opportunity this year either. He was kind of more of a high recruit that you were hoping for to develop, but he was getting passed up by freshmen so far this year and younger guys. I do also think the fans are overreacting a little bit to the Kevin Swint news. I'm leaning more towards that it's not going to make that big of a difference for any of these 4 players to be gone. We have the DJ replacement. We knew he wasn't going to hang around if he wasn't going to be the starter. Maybe even if he would have started through the ACC championship, he might have been gone. Kobe Pace is a little surprising, but again, running game was fine this year without him. Fred Davis that's a lot of depth at corner to lose. That does suck a little bit, but I mean, overall, I think we got some pretty good performance out of our corner room so far this year. And like I said about Kevin Swint, that is depth, but I never thought that Kevin Swint was going to be one of our main guys that we might, become a first round draft pick. The depth part of it is there, but other than that, I'm kind of on board with. It's not going to be that big of a difference.
Yeah, the depth thing is the biggest thing for me, and I know I probably will get a lot of flack and just say that I'm a DJ homer, but the fact that you're losing DJ, we're going into this bowl game with 2 scholarship quarterbacks because we're losing 2 quarterbacks right now to a transfer. Say what you will about a DJ, but he's an experienced person. He's, for the most part, not going to lose you a game. And like Dabo said in the post-game press conference, we don't make it to the ACC championship without DJ, and we don't win it without Cade. So I think whether people will want to admit it or not, I think DJ leaving is going to affect things. But I'll say personally, the one that really, I wouldn't say upset, I wasn't heartbroken over it, but I do hate to see Kobe Pace leave. He was one of my favorite players. He had some injuries this year, great running back, and he was like 1 or 2 last season. So I'm gonna say that I think I voted Kevin Swint in these. So just for purely for the depth, and I think I sent it out in a group text with y'all this week. I'm wondering if Swint's decision to transfer means that some people we thought might be leaving are staying. So that could be what happened there.
Yeah, and especially if you get those guys that you're talking about, like Brissy, possibly Miles Murphy, and XT coming back.
Mm-hmm.
If you like with those 3 coming back, losing Kevin Swint, you're not even going to think about really. Like even in the depth conversation, we're going to have guys coming in to play that role player backup type of role. So it does hurt all the time when people transfer away from your program, but at the end of the day, it's just part of the game nowadays.
Yep, the game is a changing, and I can't even remember. Did we discuss last week that it got, or it might not even been approved by last week, but we got a 12-team playoff coming in a couple of years. So
I don't think it was announced when we had recorded last week. So yeah, this is the first time we're talking about it, and they did include the first round bye for 4 conference champions, right?
Yeah, Clemson would be a 4 seed this season if it were in effect,
which is pretty crazy. But I do like that you're valuing the conference championships and you're getting more teams in. I'm really excited for that. Like that is going to be a lot of fun. I really hope they put some of the prelim, semifinals, and quarterfinal games at home fields. I don't know if they announced that.
They will. So the top 4 teams get a bye, and the first rounds will be at the higher seeds home stadium, which that honestly excites me the most, to have playoff football at home stadiums, potentially in places where they're not used to having games in December. Like, can you imagine a game in Wisconsin in December, a playoff game? You get some team from Florida has to travel to Wisconsin to play in snow.
I think that's an advantage, but that's
Absolutely.
kind of the fun that college football has been for a long time. It kind of brings back that aspect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next, Faxon Childress joins the show. All right, today we're joined by Faxon Childress, host of the Fax on Sports with The Roar. Thanks for joining us, Faxon.
Yeah, it's great to be with you guys, Drew and Matthew. Excited to hop on the podcast.
Absolutely. I went to go meet up with Morgan Thomas, friend of the show, and then happened to run into you on the sideline at the ACC championship game, and know that we had followed each other for a little while. So it was good to meet up and watch the game with a good view on Saturday.
Yeah, I just got blessed enough to be able to be on the field the whole game, and the Jaden Lucas pick happening right in front of us, and Rook coming with the fumble right in front of us to celebrate as well. And we were kind of bouncing back and forth the whole time, depending on which side of the field the ball was on. So that was a surreal experience. I'll remember that one for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
I'm really jealous that I didn't get to go.
I felt bad when I originally discovered that we were on the field. I meant the text I sent in our Telegram group. I was meant to send to my family. I'm like, dang, I accidentally sent that to Matthew. I hope Matthew's not gonna get FOMO. But before the game even started, you and I were talking, Faxon, and you had mentioned to me that you thought that we were going to see Cade Klubnik regardless of what DJ was doing on Saturday, and that ended up being true. What were your thoughts about the whole quarterback situation Saturday?
Yeah, well, it was, a fiasco the entire season with the quarterbacks. Obviously, Klubnik coming in to save the day against Syracuse, as everyone knows, it was a pretty big moment for him. And then, the ups and the downs of Cade Klubnik over the course of the season as he comes in against Notre Dame and throws a pick, inside the Tigers 20. So, it was an up and down season for the kid. He didn't get a lot of looks, but Dabo did say that they planned to get him that third series after the game. And pregame, he had mentioned that they wanted to get him some meaningful snaps. I was under the assumption that it wasn't smoke, just because, the Tigers' college football playoff hopes had seemingly ended. And as we know now, into the Orange Bowl after defeating North Carolina in the ACC championship game. So I thought it was not a low pressure situation for Cade to get some reps, but at the end of the day, the Tigers were not playing for the college football playoffs anymore. It just seemed like a good spot for him to get in. He went in on the third series and didn't look back.
And Matthew, you and I hadn't really even had a chance to talk about the game since Saturday night. What were your thoughts on that?
From watching it on TV, the first thing that came to mind watching it was that Clemson's defense looks pretty beat up. Like, there's a lot of guys that were limping around out there, but they're still like playing hard. But I'm glad we have the off-season part now to recoup some of these injuries. And I'll go ahead and own it, but I did pick UNC to win the game. To be fair, I picked them with the assumption that DJ was going to get more opportunities, but he didn't answer the call when he got the call. And I don't know if it was me, but the play calling seemed very different when Cade was in there. But I also kind of had a realization that maybe it was the same play calling the entire time. It was just the RPO reads, but we just weren't making the right reads or the plays on time, how the offense is supposed to be run, which was just throwing the whole offense off schedule. So that's kind of a realization that I thought that Cade was just making the reads faster and the offense was able to move on time, because, I mean, even Joseph Nada had a good game on Saturday. Like, when was the last time we said that? So,
yeah, it's been a little bit. It's one of those games where you can't necessarily point and say, well, because the offense did so well, it kind of boosted the morale of the rest of the team and they played so well. But in reality, special teams, defense, that we allowed a lot of yards on defense, but how many? It was multiple turnovers down inside the red zone that the defense or special teams came up with. And I don't know. I'd like to say maybe wishful thinking that the quarterback changes kind of had an overall spark to the team. And people who listen to the show know that I've been a big DJ fan the whole time. At this point now, he is transferring, but you have to like what you see with Cade. And then to your point, Matthew, that UNC even thought we were going to be seeing DJ the whole game, and that's what they said after the game. And I think that played a big role in Clemson's success in the game, is that they didn't even prepare for Cade. So I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on this. The last few games, 15 giveaways over the last 5 games for the Tigers. Clemson produced its first giveaway-free game since October 15th against Florida State. I think that was huge.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love this, and it was a major concern for me and why I picked North Carolina to win last week, because we had not cleaned up the turnovers, and it didn't seem like it was coming anytime soon. So it's really nice to see the execution happen.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement there. And it was just, I think a part of it as well is, Matthew mentioned reading that RPO, and it seemed like Cade was making the right decisions on a lot of RPOs. You look at his stat line and it's impressive just on surface value, the 20 for 24 for 279 and a touchdown. But Cade Klubnik also led the team in rushing, and those 4 incompletions that he had were all drops, or you could argue that 3 of the 4 were drops as well. So he played a flawless game at the quarterback spot in my eyes. I'm aware that you got to take it with a grain of salt, because this was against the North Carolina defense that does not rank well on a national scale, and it ranks almost dead last in a lot of categories in the ACC scale. So, to say that I think DJ Uyunglele would have lost this game, I think that's a bit extreme, but he struggled on the first 2 drives, and Cade came out, with his hair on fire. He played a really good ball game. So, when you have stability at the quarterback position, it gives that confidence boost to all the other units, and I'm not saying it's the reason that Will Shipley and Phil Moffitt didn't fumble specifically, but there was a lot more emphasis on ball protection. It seemed like the Tigers were a lot more in unison, and it looked like we were watching a 2018 or a 2019 or a 2016 Clemson Tiger football game. And Matthew mentioned a little bit with the play calling as well. I don't think that the play calling was vastly different. I actually think that it was pretty similar. And I think that Cade Klubnik just executes the offense in a different manner. He has a different mannerism when going through his progressions. He has a different mannerism when reading that RPOs. He has more of the ability to tuck it and run outside of the RPO. The ball is out quicker with Cade Klubnik, and I think that is the main thing that I wanted to hone in on, is the ball is out quicker. So the offense looked crisp. A lot of Brandon Streeter criticism, and myself included. I've been critical of him at times, but there's been no Brandon Streeter criticism this week, because the offense was absolutely humming against the Tar Heels.
Yeah, that's ever since DJ took over against UGA, that's one thing. It was on the very first pick 6 that he threw against UGA last year in the first game, but you could see he hesitated and pump faked on that's supposed to be a quick slant RPO, quick read. And that was the story for DJ for me the rest of the time, is the hesitation. And you reiterated that, but the play calling isn't different. It's just the execution and the making the reads and the plays, I think, is what's different, which is, I think it just is more play style, not a knock on DJ's ability.
Yeah, and the confidence thing, like you mentioned, Matthew, I went back and watched the game. First of all, this is the first game since probably Wake Forest last year that I was excited to go back and rewatch. That was a fun game. Sat down and watched it, and I think Faxon, you got a text during the game telling you about it, but Molly McGrath reported at one point in time, either just before kickoff or whatever, that Dabo basically made an hour-long montage of DJ playing well to show DJ to boost his confidence. And that, I don't know, that just made me in my head. It was so cringy.
That's the first thing. That's the first time I've heard of this. Actually, is right now.
Oh yeah. It's within the first couple minutes of the broadcast, I believe. Switching it up just a little bit. Clemson moved past Colorado for sole possession of the 11th most conference titles among current FBS programs. Colorado has been in the news this week with Coach Prime. And either of y'all got any thoughts on Prime time headed to Colorado?
I think it's interesting. I'm excited for it because it's different. There's a lot of college football programs that do things in a similar fashion nowadays in the college football world. I wouldn't consider myself a big Deion fan. I wouldn't consider myself a huge fan of the hire, but I'm excited to watch from an outsider's perspective. And for Colorado, you're 1-11. You may as well roll the dice on Deion, because if he's able to, match that success that he had at Jackson State, really put HBCU football back on the map, was able to get 5-star recruits, lucrative NIL deals for these players at Jackson State. He's got a lot more resources on his hands now coming into the Power 5. The Pac-12 is a conference that hasn't seen a college football playoff team since, I want to say, Washington in 2014 with Jake Browning. So this is a conference that struggled to make a college football playoff. I know it's getting expanded, but for Deion, there is a path, and he's been using the portal. I've heard over 200 players have reached out to him from the portal. per sources. So people want to play for him. He's an icon to the young generation. He's the best defensive back to ever play football, and he's clearly got a culture that he thinks will work if he can instill it across the country. Now, I do have to say, I think he's using this as another stepping stone if he can replicate that success. I don't think he's at Colorado for more than 3 or 4 years if he is able to, build that program up. I think he's holding out for that Florida State job. I think that's his dream job. He might not get there directly after Colorado, but I think this is another stepping stone in the coaching ladder for Deion Sanders. And I'm excited to see how this kind of new wave of college football formulates with him using the transfer portal and NIL to his advantage.
Yeah, that's kind of my feelings too. The one word I would say is I'm excited to see what he does there. Colorado was so bad this year. I think they ranked almost last in most statistical categories, or at least the like next gen projection, those type of stats. Colorado is one of the worst teams in football this year. So having a coach who was able to build a small program up to be undefeated this year, I think, or they might have lost one game, Jackson State, but to have a coach to be able to do that, I think you're right that he is going to go and try to prove that he can do this at a Power 5 school now. And then he's going to be able to try and get one of the big name jobs later on down the line.
Yeah, I don't see Colorado being a place that Deion calls home for very long. Back to the Clemson side of things, Coach Sweeney's received a lot of criticism over the last couple of weeks, this season in general, just with the way that the whole quarterback situation's been handled. I've had some frustrations. I know the two of y'all have had some frustrations, but a couple of things that kind of keep coming to mind. He has his 8th conference championship. He ties Frank Howard, and he passes Bob Stoops with 161 victories for sole possession of the second most victories in the first 15 seasons of a head coach in FBS history. So there are times when I question and get kind of frustrated with the way Dabo does things, but he's proven that he can win, and most of the time his decisions work out for him. Could you point to some mistakes with the way this is handled? I think so, and I think that I don't know that we'll ever know really the full story with that. Cade Klubnik, though, on Saturday, 20 of 24, 279 with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown as well. Klubnik recorded a 19-yard reception on a pass from running back Phil Maffa in the first quarter, the longest reception by a Clemson quarterback since Deshane Cameron, and a 37-yard reception against Virginia in 91. Matthew, I know you like that one.
This is the first time I've ever heard this name before, and I think it's kind of rare sometimes that I hear, like, especially a Clemson quarterback name from history that I've never heard before. Deshane Cameron, this is the first time I've heard of him.
91, that was a good year. Klubnik opened the game 10 for 10 with 149 yards. For reference, and I meant to go back and try to see if I could Tim Beret it, and I did not have the time to do it. 4 players threw a pass on Saturday. I have to imagine it's been a while since 4 players threw a pass in a game, but he went 10 for 10 his first drive. DJ 2 for 5 on the day before he was pulled after the second drive. Maffa 1 for 1, and Johnson, good to see Johnson 5 for 5. I know you were kind of clamoring for that last week, Matthew.
It was kind of a meme, but when you're having, like I said last week, when you're having quarterback troubles, might as well just throw anything you have at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah. Kind of switching over. Well, actually, before we switch over to defense, Cole Turner, what a game that he had. I know when that first deep ball got thrown by Klubnik, it was a perfect pass, and B, I remember looking at Faxon, I was like, is that a Sweeney that caught that ball?
I thought so too. The first thing.
I thought it was a Sweeney too.
But a true freshman, and is still going to redshirt. You have to like what you see out of him. And kind of with the talk of Klubnik, the receivers looked really well around him. Turner being our first 100-plus yard receiver since Wake Forest last year. What were y'all's thoughts on the receiving corps Saturday night?
I thought they played really well. There's been a lot of questions about the Clemson receivers over the course of the season, and rightfully so. They've been flat out bad at times, but, Cole Turner went up, made that big catch. He had another contested catch. It was absolutely huge for him. So I think that, with Cade Klubnik, it's a different element. It's a different vibe to the offense, obviously, but with Cade, I just like the vibe I'm getting from I trust my wide receiver and I'm gonna put him in a position to go make a play. I didn't feel a lot of confidence exuberated on any level of the offense when DJ Uiagalelei was the Clemson quarterback. I thought things were always kind of, we're gonna try not to lose and we're not gonna take shots and we're gonna play super conservative. Cade's out there slinging it, man. It's a different vibe. Cole's making plays. Brandon Spector had a big catch. Joe Ngata, hi. This is the first time I've seen you since week 6, so that was encouraging to see as well. And with Randall had a catch, even Ty Herbstreit got in there. It was an all-around effort from the Clemson wide receiving core, and I'm really proud of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier whenever we were talking about just intros to the North Carolina game, but even Joseph Nada had a good game in this game, and I think that just really speaks volumes to what Cade brings to the offense, is his ability to, like Faxon was saying, get the ball out quick and make the reads just to make plays. Like, you're not necessarily trying to make every single play, but when the play is there, it has to be made. So that's one thing that I think the offense is executing really well at right now.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the ball, the defense, like we mentioned, the offense did a good job of holding on to the ball, not giving it up. The defense, on the other hand, 3 turnovers, which started with Rukororo. He got a fumble recovery right there in the end zone. Jeremiah Trotter, 3 sacks on the game, and nearly doubled his career high season of 6.5. The 3 sacks was an ACC record. And then probably who I assume is your favorite defensive player, Faxon, Nate Wiggins. He, after so much scrutiny after the Wake Forest game and people kind of writing him off, and I would say unfairly so, he had a game. Cornerback Nate Wiggins, 2 pass breakups, an interception, and that one that he returned for a touchdown, hurt himself the play before, and I was like, ooh, is he going to come out of the game? And then literally the next play, take it to the house. I believe it was 98 yards.
And he had a blocked field goal in there also.
Yeah. I can't remember if you were standing right there with me at the time, Faxon, but it was after a touchdown or something. Wiggins ended up running and going celebrating with somebody on the field, and when he jumped up to like bump hips with the other person, somebody hit him in the mouth with a helmet. So not only did he hurt his leg, he was puking on the sideline. He got hit in the face and had his best game of the season. What are y'all's thoughts on how Wiggins has performed this year?
I'm just proud of him. I'm proud of Nate. It's been a battle. He had the worst game of his life against Wake Forest, and that was a game in which he had the game-winning pass breakup. People forget about that. He went big on that 4th and 20, I think it was, at Wake Forest. I don't really remember. I was up in the press box taking that one in and almost having a heart attack trying to watch that game. But, Wiggins has continued to battle over the course of the season. He's got all the traits to be a great Clemson defensive back, and he could take that Andrew Booth trajectory to the NFL. He could take that Mario Goodrich trajectory to the NFL and find himself on a roster. He just exuberates so much confidence on the field. He's going to bet on himself every time. He's got really good instincts with the ball, and people aren't afraid to challenge him. And I don't understand why people keep throwing at him. The last 5 weeks or so, he has been locked down in man-to-man coverage. He's starting to get a better grasp of what Wes Goodwin wants from him in zone coverage as well, and he's starting to play those zones a little bit better, and he's not afraid to get physical and make big tackles either. That's a part of his game where he's really come on strong. Last year, he couldn't tackle me. This year, it's been a strength for his game. So, he's continuing to progress. This offseason, I'm really excited to see, maybe he puts on another 5 to 10 pounds and becomes even more physically imposing. His feet are going to get quicker. Hope he stays healthy this entire offseason and just continues to grow as a player, because if he's a 4-year guy, that senior year could be scary. You could be talking about one of the best defensive backs in America. I'm that high on Nate Wiggins.
And kind of going back to what Drew was talking about, I'm shocked that news hasn't come out about him tearing a ligament in the ACC championship game, because I texted Drew right when it happened. I assume you guys were in the end zone around where that happened, but like right before the pick six, his knee buckled. For the people who don't know, who are listening, and he got up like limping around. He kind of got slow, but North Carolina ran hurry up and didn't sub, so he had to like line up and play the next play. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to target him. He's limping. He has a torn ACL out there, and he gets a pick six and starts running down the field. And you could tell on the rundown that he was limping a little bit and kind of compensating with that. But what an amazing game for, like, when was that? Have you ever heard a stat line like that for a DB before? 4 pass breaks, a pick 6, and a blocked field goal. That's incredible.
Yeah. And 98-yard return interception for that matter, too. Yeah, you could tell right there around the 50-yard line, he kind of slowed up a little bit, and I was like, oh, there's no way he's running it back. But he still pulled it out and took it to the house. On the defensive side of things, Clemson has scored a defensive touchdown in consecutive games for the first time since doing it 3 times in 1990 against NC State, Wake Forest, and North Carolina. So that was a 3 consecutive week against teams from North Carolina. Before we let you go, Faxon, we really appreciate you coming on. What are your thoughts heading into this Orange Bowl with Tennessee?
I'm picking the Tigers by 2 touchdowns. I know it's a bit bold. I know that Tennessee was the number 1 team in the country at some point. Their defense is not very good, especially their pass defense. I think they're going to have multiple opt-outs. Obviously Clemson's had people hit the transfer portal. Tennessee's had a few hit the transfer portal as well. Last year, Tennessee had a lot of opt-outs in their bowl game against Purdue, which ended up being an absolute classic. I forgot what the name, maybe that was the Music City Bowl or something, but that game was an instant classic. Clemson didn't have any opt-outs last year at the Cheez-It Bowl that were not transfers. So I'm expecting a lot of these Clemson guys to play. That's why I'm picking Clemson by multiple scores. I think we're going to see opt-outs for Tennessee. And also, I'm just excited to watch Cade Klubnik sling it down in Miami, man. It's been a long time coming. I've been a big advocate for Cade, not out of a place of hate for DJ, but more just because I think he was the better fit within the scheme. I think DJ is going to have success next year somewhere else where he has a scheme that fits him a little bit better. But, I'm just excited to watch Cade sling it and hope the Tigers put up a lot of points. Hope it's an entertaining game. It might be bad to say from a fan's perspective. I don't really care if they win as long as I have fun watching it. Last week was the last time I had fun watching the Tigers in this entire tenure of 2 years. There haven't been many games where I can say I've genuinely enjoyed watching it. So I'm excited to watch because I know it's going to be a fun watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. It's going to be very orange down in Miami on November 30th. Faxon, thank you again for hopping on with us. To our listeners, check him out on The Roar. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, correct? Or
yes. Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern on The Roar. Yes, sir.
And occasionally on ESPN3?
Occasionally on ESPN Plus, doing some Furman basketball, some USC Upstate basketball, just trying to stay busy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Faxon.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks to Faxon for joining the show. Seriously, if you do not listen to his show or follow him on Twitter, check it out. He has a lot of great content. He was putting out a lot of great content this Saturday at the ACC Championship game as well. He's someone who travels, gets a chance to go to most of the games, even the away games, so always putting out good content. But next, the final college football playoff rankings. We'll throw out the top 10 here. By now, you've heard of it. You know where everybody's going, that sort of stuff. But Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4, Alabama at 5, where they had Nick Saban on camera vying for why Alabama should be included in the playoff, which that just made me cringe because that goes against everything Nick Saban has ever stood for.
No, they did it on, I don't know if you watched any of the Big Ten championship game either, but during that game, the Fox News crew had Nick Saban come on, and he was doing the same little shilling, like, I think if the goal is to get the best 4 in, then we're one of the best 4. And it's like, well, then why'd you lose to 2 teams that have also lost to teams?
Yeah.
You're obviously not one of the best 4. Just take it with pride and grow from it. But I did see something funny today. It's not really funny, but kind of random about Nick Saban that kind of reminded me. But it was like a stat that was talking about coaching drop off after the age of 65. And like, obviously they're like the greats like Tom Brady and Tiger Woods, and like they're exceptions to Father Time a little bit, but like eventually Time is going to win. So it's just wondering if Time is finally catching up to Nick Saban. He went way past 6 or 7 years past when normal coaches' performance starts to drop off, and is just now starting to see a drop off. It's still impressive. He's still the greatest coach of all time. But I just thought it was an interesting stat. Maybe Time is catching up with Nick Saban.
Yeah, I personally, I am not going to write Nick Saban off. He still scares me. I thought after Dabo won 2 national championships, they had a down year or so there. I thought Dabo was kind of replacing him, and then we've seen that has not been the case. And I look for Alabama to continue to be in the conversation. You could be onto something. It could be, I mean, because at that age and the grind that it takes to coach a team at that level, it's got to take its toll on you. Rounding out the top 10, number 6, Tennessee, number 7, Clemson, Utah at 8, Kansas State at 9, and Southern California at 10. Did you have any qualms with this top 10, or what were your thoughts on them?
No, I didn't really have any issues with it. Again, I'm a little upset about Alabama being ahead of Tennessee just because of the head-to-head, and resume for Tennessee honestly looks better. USC really might have screwed Georgia's national championship hopes here by losing to Utah, because that made Georgia's play-in game a lot more difficult. Instead of playing USC, to have to play Ohio State instead. I'm really excited for that game because I think it's going to be some fireworks, Ohio State, Georgia. So maybe one of the best semifinal games we've ever seen.
Yeah, this is going to be a conundrum for me because I do not enjoy pulling for Georgia and absolutely hate Ohio State. So I guess I'm pulling for Georgia in that semifinal game, only to turn around and pull against them in the national championship game if they were to make it there. I don't really have too many qualms here. It's kind of interesting, Clemson and Tennessee right there together, and TCU. My only complaint with TCU, they went through the whole regular season undefeated. A couple of years ago, or was it like 5 or 6 years ago, they got left out of the college football playoff, and a big part of it was that they didn't play, them and Baylor, they didn't play a conference championship game, and it hurt them there. They have a playoff game or a championship game now. They play it and lose, and it doesn't hurt them. They stay at 3. So I do prefer seeing them there over a 2-loss Alabama team because I don't think Alabama should have gotten in there. And then you get to this predicament where you're ranking the top 4 teams, but then you're also trying to make sure that you're not getting rematches and that kind of stuff. Personally, I think Ohio State should be at 3, TCU at 4, but they're avoiding that Ohio State-Michigan semifinal game there.
Yeah, we saw how that one went the first time, but obviously it probably would be different the second time. As far as Clemson goes in the final, or like final at the end of the regular season college football playoff ranking, finishing at 7 with an ACC championship and an opportunity to move up at least one spot at the final rankings. I mean, you got to be happy with that. It's really impressive considering how up and down the team was this year, because it feels like we could have very easily gone 8-4.
Yeah, absolutely. This season could have just easily been like what last season was. If I were to tell you, like immediately following that South Carolina game, that the very next week Clemson's going to blow out an opponent in the ACC championship and finish in the final rankings 7th, like in my mind, the world was over for Clemson after losing to South Carolina. So you have to consider this a success. The way that the Tigers came out, they made the switch to Cade, and now you're looking at a top 7 ranking. You're playing the 6th ranked Tennessee team down in Miami. I'm kind of with Faxon on that one. Not that we're giving out picks now yet, but the fact that Tennessee's likely going to have some opt-outs, they're not going to have Hooker that was a big part of the spark to their offense. So as a Clemson fan, I'm really looking forward to this game.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty positive about it also because of that. Clemson might have some opt-outs this year, but I think Dabo's does a pretty good job of making sure that these players are bought in to what they're going to do and they're going to finish strong. Even the seniors and people who are draft hopeful. So yeah, excited about that.
Fact or fiction?
If Cade entered the game in the second half against South Carolina, the Tigers would have won, and we would be talking about a playoff berth.
I'm going fiction here. I'm honestly really tired of seeing this on Twitter. Just think back to the last time we tried to let Cade jump into the game and save us. And that was Notre Dame, and it didn't really go that well. So there's plenty of things that Clemson could have done better against South Carolina that didn't constitute making a quarterback switch. And I'm so upset at myself that I said that out loud because I sound just like Dabo.
I'm going to say fiction as well. Similar to you, like early on, like Clemson was running the ball. They had a 14-point lead there. there wasn't a chance or a need to put Cade in. It worked out perfectly this past Saturday against North Carolina because it wasn't a nail biter already. The Clemson Tigers were not reeling at that point. Bringing Cade into that situation would be similar to bringing him in another situation. I really hate the way that they handled the Notre Dame thing. And Dabo said after the UNC game that their plan was for him to kind of take over there. Well, it didn't seem like you were that they were too set on their ways there with that, because they literally put him in for that one play and then pulled him back out, and we haven't seen him again since. So I think the way they handled Cade this week would have set him up for success, and Clemson could have potentially won the game against South Carolina, but that would not have happened the way that game transpired. So I'm also going to say fiction.
Yeah, I mean, maybe say after Syracuse, you start Cade. It might be a little different. You might be looking at a different season from there, but making the switch in the middle of the South Carolina game wasn't changing that game. We still just needed to run the ball, and we could have won.
Don't tell everybody on Twitter and message boards that. They don't want to hear that. We would have won that game and we would be in the playoffs.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yep. Fact or fiction? The real MVP Saturday night was Nate Wiggins.
I'm going to say fact here, because how many players have finished with the stat line of a blocked field goal, a pick six, and 2 pass breakups? It's about as good as it gets for a DB stat line. And I'm not taking away from Cade getting the MVP, because obviously he was very deserving. He changed the game on the offensive side of the ball when he came in. It looked like a completely different team than the last few weeks. So not taking anything away from Cade, but Nate Wiggins, have a day.
I would like to agree with you. I think it's well deserved for Cade. I don't think the game goes as well as it does had we not inserted him there. It just is unfortunate that the day that Nate Wiggins has the biggest game of his career is also the day that there's a regime change at the quarterback there, and true freshman steps in and has a great stat line. But honestly, though, I mean, Nate was probably the highlight of that game, and I enjoyed watching him. He was playing with passion. He was having fun. Like I mentioned there, I think in the interview with Faxon, on top of getting hurt and all this stuff, dude's puking on the sideline. He gets smacked in the face with a helmet celebrating towards the end of the game. He was just having fun. But so I say fiction. It's just unfortunate his great day was also the same day as Cade Klubnik made that step. Fact or fiction? Dabo dips his toe into the transfer portal this offseason and brings 2+ guys into Clemson.
I'm only saying fact because I'm trying to will it into existence. You can't compete in today's landscape by just ignoring transfers. I understand that Dabo likes to do things a certain way, but when that starts holding you back, you either adapt to it or you die out. And we're going to see where Dabo makes his decision on whether he's going to die out or adapt. There has been rumors that he's kind of reached into the portal, and Clemson's been in communication with a few players, but no official offers have been made at the time of recording this. But I don't know. We'll see.
I am also going to say fact, not because I'm hoping. I think it's going to happen with the way the wide receiver room has been this season, the way that you potentially losing some guys at defensive line. I think they're definitely going to have to go to the portal for that. And I think rumor was that he had his eye on 2 offensive linemen in the portal last year, and it didn't work out. So I think that you're definitely going to see 2 or 3 guys transfer to Clemson, which will be quite interesting. It'll be something we're not used to. I understand that the game is changing, and you obviously have to adapt, like you're saying, Matthew. And for years, I've kind of been on the same mindset that Dabo has. I like he has a way he likes to do things. He likes to build the culture and that kind of stuff. But in this college football era, you're gonna have to take transfers. There's 1,000+ guys in the transfer portal right now.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't gonna find a home. And to just leave talent out there, I mean, maybe some of the people who don't find a home don't have the talent that we need here, but you're just leaving free talent out on the table pretty much. And if we don't dip into the portal this year, we're going to have leftover scholarships that we're just going to give to Daniel High School. So I don't want that. I'd rather take a transfer. But I did have just another random like side note throwback story. This question kind of prompted me to research because I was trying to see like Georgia, for example, the last 2 to 3 years has had pretty good sustained success. So I wanted to look at their activity in the transfer portal. And obviously every year they have, a handful, like 10 or so guys transfer out. But they take in 3 to 4 guys from the transfer portal every year also. But it reminded me, I saw a name. How sad is the Jamie Newman story? For those of you who don't know or don't remember, Jamie Newman was the quarterback at Wake Forest and had a really good year at Wake Forest. And then for his graduate senior year, transferred to Georgia. Then COVID happened, and Jamie Newman was being hyped up before that season, being talked about being a first-round draft pick. If he was able to have any bit of success with Georgia at quarterback, he was going to be a first-round draft pick. And he decided to opt out the COVID season in 2020. Went undrafted in 2021. So just kind of crazy that man made one decision that cost him millions and an entire different life. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Drew. It's just a random thing I came across when looking up stuff.
No, I completely forgot about that till you brought it up too. And he just flat out just like left too. Like did he go into the NFL draft? For some reason, I thought I remember as you were talking about that he just ended up just like quitting the team or something and then never ended up transferring somewhere else. Or am I thinking of someone else?
I don't know if that's...
I might be thinking of somebody else.
I could be forgetting too, but from my memory is that he transferred to Georgia, was billed to be the starting quarterback, and that was the same offseason that Georgia had JT Daniels transfer in. But Jamie Newman was billed to be the starter. And people were saying, he's gonna be a first round draft pick. Like he was on a great team. He brought a dimension to Georgia's offense that they have not had, and they've not had for a very long time. I thought that it was going to be great for Georgia, and he opted out like a few players did, and it worked out for some players who opted out of the 2020 season. But this is not one of those stories.
Yeah, and kind of on the trend of Georgia quarterbacks, JT Daniels is transferring yet again. So if he gets picked up, he will be on his 4th team in the last 4 or 5 years. Walt Deptula tweeted this week after it was announced that JT Daniels was transferring. He was like, "There's only 47 more states left for you to hit." He's just doing the tour around America.
Got California, Georgia, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Where? Oh, I guess, yeah, the next one would be his 4th.
Next, yeah. And then Stetson Bennett, dude is the same age as Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson has been in the league for how many years?
Lamar Jackson was playing against Clemson in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah. And Stetson Bennett is freaking 25 years old, same age as Lamar Jackson right now. That one kind of baffled me.
Yeah, I mean, since we're talking about Stetson Bennett, do you have any thoughts? I know there's been a lot of thoughts about Stetson being a Heisman finalist. I'm not too mad about him being there because his story is really inspiring, but what has he done that any other quarterback plugged into his situation could have done? I asked some of my Georgia friends, they were talking about how they hope he wins and how cool it would be. And it would be cool for a former walk-on to win it, but at the same time, they were talking about Max Duggan, and I said, do you think Stetson Bennett could have been the backup at the beginning of the season for TCU? Starter gets hurt. Do you think Stetson Bennett could step in and lead TCU to an undefeated season? And they both said no.
No, I don't either.
Which is like, Stetson is good for what he is, and he's a great role player and game manager for this team. He just literally has an NFL roster around him playing against high school teams.
Yeah, and I think Hooker. Hooker didn't get invited. He didn't. I think he was much more deserving than Bennett. I really don't. I do like Bennett's story and that kind of stuff, but I agree with you. He's got a lot of pieces around him. But Tennessee's season ended when Hooker went down, and that's I don't know. That's a similar type thing. If Lamar Jackson went down in those Louisville teams, Louisville would have been hot garbage. Then he made the team, so that's kind of really my only thought about it as it relates to Hendon Hooker.
Well, and it does really suck for Hendon Hooker not even getting invited to New York. I mean, if you ask anybody in college football in October who's the Heisman front runner right now, it's Hendon Hooker. And then he gets hurt and misses like one game and isn't even invited to New York. It really sucks for him. I mean, I guess he just shouldn't have gotten hurt if he really wanted the Heisman.
He didn't give all those points to South Carolina.
So, yeah, I'm pretty disappointed in the snub of Hendon Hooker, but hopefully we won't have to see him in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think we will. Week 15 picks. Matthew and I are kind of changing it up this week with there only being the Army-Navy game going on. So we're picking this game twice. We're each giving out either a favorite or an underdog, and then we're giving out an over or an under. You going with the favorite Navy, or are you going with the underdog Army?
I am going with Army to win the game, and for the over-under, I am going to go with the under, even though it's only 32 and a half. I was looking at their season. I was looking at their season stats, and it's like both teams are averaging like 300 rushing yards a game, but like less than 100 passing yards. I was a little hesitant to pick Navy or to pick Army because their defense allows a lot of rushing yards also, but Navy's doesn't. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I just wanted to pick a random team because I'm not going to watch this game. I'm telling you right now.
I too am going Army plus 2.5. Did you say, I completely missed it? You're going with the over or under for 32.5?
I'm picking the under.
The under. Okay. So under 32.5.
I was looking at the stats, like as I was looking at how many rushing yards and how many points per game these teams score. No way. No way.
Okay, so you and I are going to agree on Army plus 2.5. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say over. I don't know. I know this is Army Navy, but come on, 32.5 points. Get me to 33.
So the stats that I was looking at, Navy is averaging 91 passing yards this year per game, 239.5 rushing yards. Army is averaging 81 passing yards per game and 304 rushing yards per game. I'm pretty sure 304 leads the nation, which is one of the reasons why I picked them to win the game. On defense, Navy allows 270 passing yards per game and 85 rushing yards. That's a pretty good rushing yard number to have. And then back over to Army. Army allows 172 passing yards, which is 100 less than Navy allows, but we know Navy's not going to pass the ball. And they allow 193 rushing yards per game, which is pretty much double or over double what Navy allows. So it's going to be a slugfest, just great classic wing tee football. I am not going to watch it at all. I'm taking a break of football this week.
I'll probably have it on. It's one of those games that I kind of watch for the pageantry and that kind of stuff, but it's definitely not one of those ones that really gets me excited based on the play on the field. So just to confirm, both Matthew and I are both going Army plus 2.5. Matthew's taking the under 32.5, and I'm taking over 32.5. So the only way one of us is gaining ground on each other is based on this over-under here. So I could tie it, and Matthew could take a 2-point lead. We'll see. All right, before we let you go, just wanted to talk a little early bowl game thoughts. The 7th-ranked Tigers will face the 6th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers in the Capital One Orange Bowl on Friday, December 30th. It'll be an 8 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. It will be Clemson's 7th all-time Orange Bowl appearance and its first since appearing in the College Football Playoff semifinal in 2015. The Tigers are 4-2 all-time in the Orange Bowl. There's a lot of great moments in Orange Bowl games.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to that win against Ohio State, that was 40-35, I believe, in 2013. Sammy Watkins had like 16 catches in that game, the Clemson record.
Mm-hmm.
You think about The Orange Bowl against West Virginia was a great time.
It did wonders for our program.
It did. We won the national championship in '81 in the Orange Bowl. Can't think of some of the others off the top of my head.
Well, I will say that 2013 one and then 2015 one, I watched both of those in Buffalo Wild Wings. Emily and I watched the Ohio State one. It was a 2013, but I think it actually occurred in 2014. And when I was looking it up this week, I'm pretty sure there's 2 Orange Bowls that say 2014 just because of the way the calendar worked out. But Emily and I watched that at Buffalo Wild Wing, and we were the only Clemson fans. And I don't know. Back in the day, I was very superstitious. I would wear the same things that I wore with previous matchups. I like to just do the same thing. So when Clemson had the opportunity to play Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, happened to be out of town, we went to the Buffalo Wild Wings in Columbia. The fine folks of Columbia down there, the 2 Gamecock fans got in a fight with somebody at the bar while we were sitting in there. It was an interesting time, but yeah, 2 classics.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this matchup. If you would have asked me last week how excited I was to play Tennessee, I would have said 0%. But after the quarterback switch and after how we performed and the whole team performed against North Carolina, it feels like there's another fire underneath them. Like it's a new team. They finally have an identity. They finally put a complete game together. So I'm excited. We've talked about it with Faxon that Tennessee's probably going to have some opt-outs here. Hendon Hooker isn't playing. He was a big part of their success early in the year. Clemson has a really good opportunity to win this game and put a stamp and say that they are number 2 on the tier list of the 3 teams, South Carolina, Clemson, and Tennessee, not at the bottom of it.
And then South Carolina, speaking of them, they got Notre Dame, the 2 teams that happened to beat Clemson this year. And
it was interesting how that worked out, that we got our bowl game is 2 teams that South Carolina beat this year, and their bowl game is 2 teams that beat us.
Yeah. Funny how that works out. I'm hoping that with the long break here that South Carolina and Spencer Rattler have a moment to cool off, and Notre Dame will take care of business.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that one too much, but thinking about it, I don't expect South Carolina to be as hot as they were. They do have a lot of momentum, but this is a lot of time off before that game, that a lot of time to just lose your momentum. So got to stay crisp in practice.
Yeah. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us yet again for another episode. Like we mentioned, we're going to be doing shorter episodes the next couple of weeks before we do a full-length episode previewing the Orange Bowl. As always, if you don't follow us on all the various social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, like Matthew said, he's putting out the full episode video for it this week on YouTube. Definitely check us out. We're so close to reaching 2,000 followers on Twitter, so help get us over that edge, but before New Year's, that'd be kind of nice. So
yeah, thank you guys again for listening. We really appreciate it. It was a really great season. This is kind of the end of the season episode, but not really. Just kind of in between, but it's the end of the regular season. Thank you guys again for listening. Follow Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Instagram. I think I said Instagram twice. YouTube. All of it, it'll all be linked in the description of the podcast. And we hope that you guys have a great holiday season. We will be back for shorter episodes next week. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
There you go. Good job bringing it home there. My communication skills have been way off today. My mind's been